Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to Raven's Readings. I do readings twice a week from various classics. If you subscribe to my free Substack newsletter at ravensview.substack.com, you'll get notified of the next episode and can leave your comments or suggestions. And perhaps also browse my flash fiction writings or musings on the world. I will be reading to you from Very Good Jeeves. It's a collection of short stories written by P.G. Wodehouse in 1930. Jeeves, a very competent valet, and his hapless employer, Bertie Wooster, were characters in dozens of short stories by Wodehouse. They are told from the point of view of Bertie. Last episode, Bertie came up with a solution to Sippy's problem. A booby trap of flour dropped onto the head of Headmaster Waterbury. Seems foolproof. The first thing you need in matters of this kind, as that every general knows, is a thorough knowledge of the terrain. Not know the terrain and, where are you? Look at Napoleon and that sunken road at Waterloo. Silly ass. I had a thorough knowledge of the terrain of Sippy's office, and it ran as follows. I won't draw a plan, because my experience is that when you're reading one of those detective stories and come to the bit where the author draws a plan of the manor, showing the room where body was found and the stairs leading passageway and all the rest of it, one just skips. I'll just explain it in a few words. The offices of the Mayfair Gazette were on the first floor of a moldy old building off Covent Garden. You went in a front door, and ahead of you was a passage leading to the premises of Bellamy Brothers, dealers in seeds and garden produce. Ignoring the brothers Bellamy, you proceeded upstairs and found two doors opposite you. One, marked private, opened into Sippy's editorial sanctum. The other, subtitled Inquiries, shot you into a small room where an office boy sat, eating peppermints and reading the adventures of Tarzan. If you got past the office boy, you went through another door, and there you were in Sippy's room, just as if you'd nipped through the other door marked private. Perfectly simple. It was over the door marked Inquiries that I proposed to suspend the flour. Now, setting a booby trap for a respectable citizen like a headmaster, even of a school inferior to your own, is not a matter to be approached lightly and without careful preparation. I don't suppose I've ever selected a lunch with more thought than I did that day, and after a nicely balanced meal, preceded by a couple of dry martinis, and washed down with half a bottle of nice light dry champagne, and followed by a spot of brandy, I could have set a booby trap for a bishop. The only really difficult part of the campaign was to get rid of the office boy, for naturally you don't want witnesses when you're shoving bags of flour on doors. Fortunately, every man has his price, and it wasn't long before I contrived to persuade the lad that there was sickness at home and he was needed at Cricklewood. This done, I mounted a chair and got to work. It was many, many years since I had tackled this kind of job, but the old skill came back as good as ever. Having got the bag so nicely poised that a touch on the door would do all that was necessary, I skipped down from my chair and popped off through Sippy's room and went into the street. Sippy had not shown up yet, which was all to the good, but I knew he usually trickled in at about 2:55. I hung about in the street, and presently round the corner came the bloke Waterbury. He went in at the front door, and I started off for a short stroll. It was no part of my policy to be in the office when things began to happen. It seemed to me that, allowing for wind and weather, the scales should have fallen from old Sippy's eyes by about 3:15 Greenwich Mean Time. So, having prowled around Covent Garden among the spuds and cabbages for 20 minutes or so, I retraced my steps and pushed up the stairs. I went in at the door marked private, fully expecting to see old Sippy, and conceive of my astonishment and chagrin when I found on entering only the bloke Waterbury. He was seated at Sippy's desk, reading a paper, as if the place belonged to him. And moreover, there was of flour on his person, not a trace. Great Scott, I said. It was a case of the sunken road, after all. But dash it, how could I have expected to take into consideration the possibility that this cove, headmaster though he was would have the cold nerve to walk into Sippy's private office instead of pushing in a normal and orderly manner through the public door? He raised his nose and focused me over it. Yes? I was looking for old Sippy. Mr. Sipperley has not yet arrived. He spoke with a great deal of pique, seeming to be a man who was not used to being kept waiting. "Oh, well, how is everything?" I said, to ease things along. He'd started reading again. He looked up as if he found me pretty superfluous. "I beg your pardon?" "Oh, nothing." "You spoke?" "I only said, how is everything, don't you know?" "How is what?" "Everything." "I fail to understand you." "Oh, let it go," I said. I found a certain difficulty in boosting along the chit-chat. He was not a responsive cove. "Nice day," I said. "Quite. But they say that crops need rain." He had buried himself in the paper once more and seemed peeved this time on being lugged to the surface. "What?" "The crops." "The crops?" "Crops." "What crops?" "Oh, just crops." He laid down the paper. "You appear to be desirous of giving me some information about crops. What is it?" "I hear they need rain." "Indeed." That concluded the small talk, and he went on reading, and I found a chair and sat down and sucked the handle of my walking stick. And so the long day wore on. It may have been some 2 hours later, or it may have been about 5 minutes, when there became audible in the passage outside a strange wailing sound, as if some creature in pain. The bloke Waterbury looked up. I looked up. The wailing came closer. It came into the room. It was Sippy singing, "I love you, that's all I can say. I love you, the same old." He suspended the chant, not too soon for me. "Oh, hello," he said. I was amazed. The last time I had seen old Sippy, you must remember, he had had all the appearance of a man who didn't know it was loaded. Haggard, drawn face, circles under the eyes, all that sort of thing. And now, not much more than 24 hours later, he was simply radiant. His eyes sparkled, his mobile lips were curved in a happy smile. He looked as if he'd been taking as much as will cover a sixpence every morning before breakfast for years. "Hello, Bertie," he said. "Hello, Waterbury, old man. Sorry I'm late." The bloke Waterbury seemed by no means pleased at this cordial form of address. He froze visibly. "You are exceedingly late. I may mention that I've been waiting for upward of half an hour, and my time is not without its value." Sorry, said Sippy jovially. You wanted to see me about that article on the Elizabethan dramatist you left here yesterday, didn't you? Well, I read it, and I'm sorry to say, Waterbury, old chap, that it's NG. "I beg your pardon?" "No earthly use to us. Quite the wrong sort of stuff. This paper is supposed to be all light society interest. What the debutante will wear for Goodwood, you know, and I saw Lady Betty Boodle in the park yesterday, and she is, of course, the sister-in-law of the Duchess of Peebles, and cuckoo to her intimates, all that sort of rot. My readers don't want stuff about Elizabethan dramatists." Sipperley, old Sippy reached out and patted him in a paternal manner on the back. "Now listen, Waterbury," he said kindly. "You know as well as I do that I hate to turn down an old pal. But I have my duty to the paper. Still, don't be discouraged. Keep trying and you'll do fine. There's a lot of promise in your stuff, but you want to study your market. Keep your eyes open and see what editors need. Now, just as a suggestion, why not have a dash at a light, breezy article on pet dogs? You've probably noticed that the pug, once so fashionable, has been superseded by the Peak, the Griffin, and the Sealyham, and work on that line and—" The bloke Waterbury navigated toward the door. "I have no desire to work on that line, as you put it," he said stiffly. "If you do not require my paper on the Elizabethan dramatists, I shall no doubt be able to find another editor whose tastes are more in accord with my work." "The right spirit, absolutely, Waterbury," said Sippy cordially. "Never give in. Perseverance brings home the gravy. If you get an article accepted, well, send another article to that editor. If you get an article refused, well, send that article to another editor. Carry on, Waterbury. I shall watch your future progress with considerable interest." "Thank you," said the bloke Waterbury bitterly. "This expert advice shall prove most useful." He biffed off, banging the door behind him. I turned to Sippy, who was swerving about the room like an exuberant snipe. "Sippy? Hey, what? Can't stop, Bertie, can't stop. Only looked in to tell you the news. I'm taking Gwendolen to tea at the Carlton. I'm the happiest man in the world, Bertie. Engaged, betrothed. All washed up and signed on the dotted line. Wedding June the 1st at 11 a.m. sharp at St. Peter's, Eaton Square. Present should be delivered before the end of May." But Sippy, come to roost for a second. How did this happen? I thought, well, it's a long story. Much too long to tell you now. Ask Jeeves. He came along with me, and he's waiting outside. But when I found her bending over me, weeping, I knew that a word from me was all that was needed. I took her little hand in mine. "What do you mean, bending over you? Where?" "In your sitting room." "Why?" "Why what?" "Why was she bending over you?" "Oh, because I was on the floor, ass. Naturally, a girl would bend over a fellow who was on the floor. Goodbye, Bertie. I must rush." He was out of the room before I knew he'd started. I followed at a high rate of speed, but he was down the stairs before I reached the passage. I legged it after him, but when I got into the street, it was empty. Well, not absolutely empty. Jeeves was standing on the pavement, gazing dreamily at a Brussels sprout which lay in the fairway. "Mr. Sipperley has this moment gone, sir," he said as I came charging out. I halted and mopped the brow. "Jeeves," I said, "what has happened?" "As far as Mr. Sipperley's romance is concerned, sir, all I am happy to report is well. He and Miss Moon have arrived at a satisfactory settlement." "I know, they're engaged, but how did this happen?" "I took the liberty of telephoning to Mr. Sipperley in your name, asking him to come immediately to the flat, sir." "Oh, well, that's how he came to be at the flat. Well?" "I then took the liberty of telephoning to Miss Moon, informing her that Mr. Sipperley had met with a nasty accident. As I anticipated, the young lady was strongly moved and announced her intention of coming to see Mr. Sipperley immediately. When she arrived, it required only a few moments to arrange the matter. It seems that Miss Moon has long loved Mr. Sipperley, sir, and I should have shot that when she turned up and found he hadn't had a nasty accident, she'd have been thoroughly pipped at being fooled. Mr. Sipperley had had a nasty accident, sir." "He had?" "Yes, sir." "Rummy coincidence. I mean, after what you were saying this morning?" "Not altogether, sir. Before telephoning to Miss Moon, I took the further liberty of striking Mr. Sipperley a sharp blow on the head with one of your golf clubs, which was fortunately lying in the corner of the room. The putter, I believe, sir. If you recollect, you were practicing with it this morning before you left." I gaped at the blighter. I had always known Jeeves for a man of infinite sagacity, sound beyond belief on any question of ties and spats, but never before had I suspected him capable of strong-arm work like this. It seemed to open up an entirely new aspect of the fellow. I can't put it better than by saying that, as I gazed at him, the scales seemed to fall from my eyes. "Good heavens, Jeeves!" "I did it with the utmost regret, sir. It seemed to be the only course." "But look here, Jeeves, I don't get this. Wasn't Mr. Sipperley pretty shirty when he came to and found you had been soaking him with putters?" "He was not aware that I had done so, sir. I took the precaution of waiting until his back was momentarily turned." "But how did you explain the bump on his head?" "I informed him that your new vase had fallen on him, sir." "Why on earth would he believe that? The vase would have been smashed." "The vase was smashed, sir." "What?" "In order to achieve verisimilitude, I was reluctantly compelled to break it, sir. And in my excitement, sir, I am sorry to say I broke it beyond repair." I drew myself up. "Jeeves," I said. "Pardon me, sir, but would it not be wiser to wear a hat? There is a keen wind." I blinked. "Aren't I wearing a hat?" "No, sir." I put up a hand and felt the lemon. It's perfectly right. "Huh, nor I am. I must have left it in Sippy's office. Wait here, Jeeves, while I fetch it." "Very good, sir." "I have much to say to you." "Thank you, sir." I galloped up the stairs and dashed in at the door, and something squashy fell on my neck, and the next minute the whole world was a solid mass of flour. In the agitation of the moment, I had gotten in at the wrong door, and what it all boils down is that if any of my pals get inferiority complexes, they can jolly well get rid of them for themselves. Bertram is through. End of chapter. I think many of us saw this coming. Bertie's ideas aren't always bad ones, but they often fail in the execution. Just a reminder, if you subscribe to my free newsletter at ravensview.substack.com, you'll get notified of my updates as soon as they're ready. Plus, you can browse the various short stories and musings I have in there. If you enjoyed this reading or have other classics you'd like to hear, do leave me a comment. Check out my other posts on my Substack. And remember to share this with your friends. Ta-ta for now.